Hi, everyone. Tom Yorton here with a very special episode of Ask the Experts. We were joined very recently by our colleague Veta Richardson, who is here to talk about her new book, Take 6 Essential Habits to Own Your Destiny, Overcome Challenges, and Unlock Opportunities. I found it to be a great book. It's full of practical insights for anyone who's looking to build or revive a career or to support someone who's going through that. It's part career guide, part autobiography, where Veta gives us an inside look at the toolkit that she's built over a whole career, from her earliest days as a legal intern at Sunoco to her current role as president and chief executive officer of the Association of Corporate Counsels, which is the world's largest organization serving exclusively in-house counsel. It was a fun conversation. It was lively. It was interesting. It was clear. All the things that the book itself are. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. I hope you enjoy the book. Check it out. So Veta, it is so good to be with you today. How are you?
I'm very well. Nice to be with you too, Tom. Thank you for your interest in my book.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic book. And I guess we should start there by saying, what does it feel like to be a published author? It's no small thing.
It is an amazing feeling. So first you go through the dedication to getting it done, and all you can think is like, is this ever going to be done? Am I ever going to purge and express all the things that in my head are moving around? Then you turn in that final manuscript and you feel this sigh of relief. And then I was warned, then as a first-time author, and I know that you've been there, first-time author, you start to have all this self-doubt. I probably should have spent more time on this, less time on that, forgot to put this in, and then worry about what are critics going to say? Who's going to dislike it? What did I do wrong? All of that anxiety about how it's going to be received, because you spent 6 months or more on it, and then you give birth to it, and you just want everybody to love it, but that's an unreasonable expectation, right?
Totally. Yeah, and I think it's not important that everyone love it. And I would say I love it. I've had a chance. You gave me a sneak preview of it some weeks ago before the publication date, and I was really happy to have some time with it. It's a fantastic book, and I think just for our listeners, kind of the way we'd like to architect this conversation, I want to give you a sense of what Take 6 is all about. Obviously, by virtue of the title, you can tell that the spine of the book, or the main organizing idea, is based on 6 key principles that Veta structured. And we're going to unpack those in the first part of the conversation. Love to also get Veta's sense of what it was like writing the book, what the impetus was, a little bit about her backstory and how that drove her to write this. Because I think it's a very interesting story. This is obviously, Veta's an attorney, but this is not a book for lawyers. This is not a book for compliance or regulatory professionals. This is a book for business people in general, and people early in their careers, maybe people mid-careers who are looking to go to the next level. And there's some fantastic ideas that we'll get into, and I want to understand what drove her to do that. And there's just some other fun ideas that we can hopscotch around in the time that we have. But
okay, thanks.
Maybe what we'll do, just to orient the readers a little bit, what I'll do, Veta, is kind of abbreviate what each of the different different chapters are around taking stock and taking risks. And I'll unpack them briefly, but then we'll go back one by one, and you can elaborate on what they're all about. So
sure, sounds good.
The spine of the book really is around different things that you should take, that people in their careers should take stock, assessing who they are and assessing where they are in their career journey. They should be willing to take risks, and not only for themselves, but to create an environment that supports the responsible risk-taking in others. So taking risk is critical to success. The notion of taking credit, by not just deferring and pushing credit to other people, but to accept some of that focus and the merit in learning how to take credit and the importance of that in building your own career. Taking a hand, being willing to accept help from others. Taking a stand, being willing to understand the value of your own voice and knowing when to raise it. And then lastly, to take command, to lead with authority, and then to act decisively based on what you know and what you believe. So it's a super powerful construct, I thought. And I think those ideas resonate with me. And I'm an old guy, and I imagine they would resonate with
Me
people at
too.
different
An
stages
old woman.
earlier in their career. So maybe if we could just go one by one, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about them, Vita. So talk about take stock. Tell us a little bit about taking
Yes.
stock.
Sure. And Tom, what's interesting is these are principles, but I think what defines the level of success that you'll have is the dedication that you have to returning to them and exercising them and making them part of your habits. So it's moving it from a principle or a good thing to do to habits that you regularly undertake as part of your career planning and career goal setting. So take stock is the habit that I spent the most time on because it really underpins all the others. Take stock is all about being honest with yourself about where am I now? Where is it that I want to see my goals or my career or make a career change? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? And seeing how far, measuring that gap and then using the other habits to help you close that gap. So take stock is really important. It's about assessing, perhaps I need additional educational preparedness or training. I need to expand my networks. I need to acquire new skills. It is looking at where you are now and being honest about it. Also inviting feedback in terms of things that you may have blinders to in terms of your ability to improve or do better. And then doing that measure, here's where I want to go, here's where I am now, what's my plan to get there?
Yeah,
And
that's
that's why that one is such a really critical habit and why it really kicks off the book.
yeah, it sounds foundational to me, and it sounds that this an idea maybe in less business terms is just having cultivated self-awareness, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And that comes from being quiet and doing your own assessment, but also being open to what others think, and might recommend and suggest.
And I guess implicit in the fact that you wrote a book around this with this as a foundational idea, you must feel in your experience that there's not a lot of things out there to help people with this, that it's not a natural thing for people to do in their careers. Has that been your experience, that there's no one that shows you how to do that?
Yes, yes. Well, actually, some of these ideas were born out of my prior position when I was at Minority Corporate Counsel Association and working a lot with people who are at the earlier stages of their careers or even mid-career professionals who are trying to make that breakthrough, that big promotion or that next level. And sometimes, as we did research and talked to people at those stages, we found that often some people are trained and told, put your head down, work hard, and good things will come to you. And that is allowing someone else or, um, you know, inertia or luck to really guide what happens or comes to you, as opposed to being more proactive about driving your own career, driving the direction that your professional development might take, being more proactive about determining what it is that you need or want to be able to achieve, as opposed to waiting until someone asks and then, oh, maybe I'd like to do that, maybe I wouldn't, and having your career take you for a ride or someone else take your career for a ride, as opposed to putting yourself more in the driver's seat. And
Yeah,
that's what
that
this
thought
is about.
yeah, that thought really occurred to me as I read the book, that you could have almost a seventh take, or maybe even more. But one of the thought that occurred to me was taking control. That you're taking control of your destiny. That you're not, leaving it to others to decide your fate. And so I
Yes.
think that that's kind of what I'm hearing you say here.
Yes, and that's why in part the subtitle is Own Your Destiny. Own it. It's yours to own. It's not someone else's to manage, control, or direct for you.
Yeah. Well, let's jump to the second take. The idea. This may be a counterintuitive idea for a lot of people in business. The notion of taking risk. Aren't we supposed to avoid risk? Aren't we supposed to keep our head down? Aren't we supposed to steer clear of any
Some of
potential
us are
challenge?
told that, certainly, and certainly I work in a profession, law, that tends to be a little bit risk averse. We're all about mitigating risk or helping organizations reduce the amount of risk exposure that they might have. But I don't think that we should apply those same notions necessarily to how we manage ourselves or our aspirations. And so one of the biggest risks is actually remaining in the status quo and staying still, as
Mhm.
opposed to thinking about ways that you can step out of your status quo. Those present oftentimes the greatest opportunities for stretch assignments, to learn, to grow, to even learn from failure, because you may take risk and it may not end up as well as you had hoped. But then what's part of the recovery is making sure that you learn, the lessons, even when things may not work out as well as you had hoped.
Mhm. If it's possible, it might be helpful if you think about your own career. You share many examples in the book, but maybe a couple of risks that you had to take along the way to get you where you are today.
Yeah, certainly. I guess one of the first stories that I share in the book is how I took a risk back as a student in law school. Um, Between the second and third years of law school, it's a big summer. Oftentimes, people try to position themselves for the summer opportunity that may offer a permanent job when they graduate. So, doing anything iffy during that second summer is a risk to begin with. But in my case, I'd always set the goal that I wanted to use my law degree in connection with business to do corporate work for a corporation as in-house counsel. And so um, I heard that there were opportunities at Sunoco to be able to be a summer intern in their law department. Not very many opportunities like that come the way for law students. And so by the time I was able to write to the company, because this is in the days before the internet made it so easy to communicate and get in touch or hear about things, I wrote, all the positions were filled. It was like, thanks very much. You have an interesting resume. No room in the intern program for you. So that was a moment where I thought, well, I need to take a chance. And I'll also share, Tom, that I was a good student, but I wasn't a top 10% of the class student. I was not at, a top ranked law school.
Mhm.
So I also understood that where I was in terms of my law school positioning, my positioning within the law school, no room at the law department, for you,
Yeah.
these big aspirations and goals, that I had to be willing to step out of myself a lot further in terms of the risk that I would take in order to potentially even have a reward.
Yeah.
So that's when I offered to work for free that summer. Certainly increased the amount of my student debt from not having a paid opportunity that summer. And I humbled myself and moved back to my parents' house in the bedroom that I had as a child with, my Barbies and teddy bears still on the shelf. It's very humbling to be in your 20s and back in your childhood bedroom. And, went for the opportunity at Sunoco. So that was a risk. It ended up
Yeah.
paying off well for me because I was one of two students out of the intern class who was extended an offer on graduation. And
Yeah.
that was not an expectation when I, walked in as a walk-on.
I love that. And as I hear a couple things there. You bet on yourself. And also going back to the first point, you had an honest assessment. You took stock of where your situation was and the moves you needed to make based on your situation. And you made a frank assessment and you pushed your chips on the table and it worked out well. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, but in the interest of time, I do want to get through some of the other important
Sure.
points in the book. The next idea that you talk about, Veta, is taking credit. Talk a little bit about that. Shouldn't we be deferring credit to other people? Shouldn't we be sharing the spotlight with other people? What's the
Oh,
right
yes.
balance?
Yes, we certainly should. And the recommendation that you have a habit of taking credit is more about assessing the value that you bring and making sure that you understand the value that you bring, the significant projects that you may have played a strong role in making successful, what are the significant achievements that you accomplished during the span of a year. I say during the span of a year because we all are subject to the annual performance review, the quarterly discussions, and so you need to be proactively tracking the contributions that you make. So then when it's time to have those discussions around what did you bring to the table, you're not necessarily relying on someone else to have documented all of that for you. And that's not because your manager doesn't care. It's because your manager may manage other people, have their own, big agenda in terms of their work and responsibilities. And so it really is a lesson in self-responsibility to be able to understand your worth, understand the value that you bring. And certainly in bringing value, you should be the type of person who also shares credit, but you should also not be so, um, focused on sharing credit and deflecting the spotlight when it shines on you that you feel uncomfortable when it does. And I
Yeah.
know that when I was at MCCA, we did research and discussions around people who manage people and tendencies of different groups. And we saw that some people just naturally deflect credit. Someone says, great job. And before they can say, thanks, I worked hard, thanks for acknowledging that. And so was also part of the team and made a significant contribution. It's a deflection, like, well, it wasn't really me, it was the team.
Yeah.
How many times have we heard people say that? Wasn't me, it was the team? Well, that minimizes your worth. And obviously it was the team, but you're being thanked because it's acknowledged that you played a significant role in the result that was achieved.
Yeah, what you just said there that unlocked something for me is this whole idea of it's an and. It's yes, I did these things and I worked really hard, and
Yes.
I had some help along the way. I think that's really, really a powerful idea. It's a simple idea, but it's a very powerful idea. And I've been a deflector, thinking that that was virtuous.
Right.
And I think the thing that's also occurring to me hearing you talk about it is when people look at people like me doing that, they may feel that they're obligated to do that too, and it can have a ripple effect in the organization where I think you don't want the opposite of that, where everyone's
Right.
clamoring for the footlights. But I think there's a balance, and you found a nice balance in with this notion of yes and sorry, not to use my own book title, yes and.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is a yes and there are some people who culturally are told to be humble, not to take credit, and so at least in terms of Western business culture, um, you know, there can be detriments to be paid if you aren't comfortable allowing the spotlight to shine and taking that moment just to be proud.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, excellent. Taking a hand. What does it mean to take a hand?
It means two things. Take a hand is all about being humble enough to admit when you need help and then reaching for help from someone who may be more experienced or offer a perspective that you don't have, but that you know that you need. Um, but take a hand is also about being the type of person who extends your hand to help others, whether it's in a mentoring role, it could be an advisory role, but coaching someone else, you know, offering your expertise to someone else on a project that they're working on, but it's also being giving of what you have to share as well. And in the book, I talk about how if you have a choice between, are you a net giver or a net receiver? You want to be a net giver.
Mhm.
That actually will develop you further than being a net taker. And it seems a little bit counterintuitive. It seems as though if you are the one that everyone is giving to, you would think maybe you're going to go a little bit further. But I actually believe that the process of helping someone else navigate a career challenge or problem solve, actually helps you develop muscle memory. So when you encounter shades of the same thing, you're better initially at problem solving for yourself because there are shades of it that you may have encountered through the advice that you've given others, and you've given it in more of an objective, detached sort of way than when you're all in the thick of it yourself.
That's so
So
smart.
that's
So
take a hand.
that's so smart, and it's such a good idea. It brings to mind a quote that's attributed to Joan Didion, the writer. I don't know if it's exactly her or not, but I'll assume it is. She said, I write to learn what I think. And when I hear you talk about mentoring, I sometimes, from my own experience, think I mentor to learn what I think. It's like the act of doing it helps you clarify where you stand on things. Has
Yeah,
that
it
been your
certainly
experience?
does. Certainly does. In terms of in my role at ACC and in prior roles, there are times when members come to me who are in transition. People have been displaced through their job for a variety of reasons, who have made a decision to leave a position and who are looking for that next opportunity. And that process of helping them take an inventory of the skills that they have to offer, are they reflected well in their professional summary? That thought process helps me when I'm evaluating candidates, perhaps. If I'm evaluating, is an opportunity right for myself? Where is it that I may want, my career or my next learning opportunity to come? And that process, that muscle memory that you develop through advising people through all sorts of situations, really is strengthening for yourself. And it's also a confidence builder to think that you have something to share and give that will help someone else at a point in life that they need uh, help or direction.
Yeah, that's great. And just I'd say at this juncture, we've got a couple other takes to walk through, but the clarity in the book is so great. The stories are great. The stories are clear. And just as one first time author to another, I will tip my cap to you for telling things in stories. I had to have that beaten into me because I write in the abstract, and someone had to tell me to write in stories, and you do. So it makes everything much more accessible, and these ideas come to life through the stories, your own stories, and the stories that you tell of others. But then just the helpful recaps at the end of chapters, those kinds of things are just
Thank
super,
you.
super potent and makes it
So
really come to life.
let me jump in there real quick and say I had a hand.
Oh,
So I was smart enough to know to take a hand. And so I actually worked with a fantastic ghostwriter. She's not really a ghost. Her name is Deborah Hilton. And she's, supported several writers to get their stories on paper. And so she was a
wonderful.
terrific writing partner.
That's wonderful. Um, so just a couple more with the time that we have here. Taking a stand, that's everything, and it feels like it's of more importance all the time. Talk a little bit about taking a stand and what that means to our listeners.
Yeah. So take a stand doesn't have to mean, I come out with a statement on a hot societal issue or topic. It can. That can be taking a stand related to your values in relation to what may be going on that you feel a need to speak out or speak up. But take a stand is really about um, how you navigate smaller things that help you establish your voice. Um, Someone may um, ask you to, manage a project or give you direction, and you may need to take a stand and say, well, I actually don't think it should be done that way. That's a small stand. It is dealing with expressing your different view from someone else of a situation or something that might be going on. That's a small stand, and it's the ability to navigate expressing yourself or your different opinion, taking a stand that's different from what, even a superior might be expressing as their opinion on topic or subject. That helps you develop your voice to expressing how you might see things or see things differently. And from navigating those small things, when there comes a big thing,
Yeah.
um, your voice is a lot stronger and more developed to be able to speak and speak out. So that's what taking a stand is about. Taking a stand is through the process of taking stock. You've become comfortable with yourself, your values, where you are versus where you want to go. And so when things come up that are objectionable or where you feel as though, it's contra to your notion, your values, your morals, your principles, your ethics, those are big ones.
Yeah.
but it can be smaller things as well, the direction that the company should take, on a different project or assignment.
Yeah, I like that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I love the idea of what it means for your own development, but I also love the idea of what it means for people who are observing you. When you do that, the positive impact that it can have on others to encourage them to do the same. And the counter argument is true too, that when people see people passing on the chance to take a stand, that tends to be contagious too. And we've worked in those organizations that behave that way, and that's really rough.
Right. And, we all live in a society where we're often told, if you see something, say something. But being the one to say something in some settings requires some courage, to step up and to be the one who says something, as opposed to just walking by and ignoring something that you feel really should be addressed.
Absolutely. Well, just rounding out the last chapter, take command, and this notion of leading with authority and acting decisively. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So that actually, originally this book started out as Take 5. And as I went through the pandemic as a leader, it evolved to include Take Command, be more focused on how you're going to lead, and also realizing that leadership takes many forms. Certainly, as CEO, I'm leader of an association of corporate counsel. That is a role. It is organizational leadership. But there are people who lead very important projects, like the turn we had to make from in-person programming to moving all virtual because of the cards that the pandemic dealt us. There was leadership there in that project management, significant leadership responsibility on those who were entrusted, to move that project forward, especially the primary point person for that. Even in terms of wellness, I tell the story in the book about two more junior level members of the staff who stepped up as leaders to help lead our organization around wellness and inspiration and resilience. One of our employees just started on her own because she could see on our virtual coffee that sometimes people were down, in the early days of the pandemic, especially as we were trying to figure our way. There was a lot of sadness in terms of what we were losing, and having to forego. And she just started writing and posting to us a daily uplifting message, something to focus on that was inspirational and galvanizing, for our team. That's leadership. As much as, it is leadership to figure out the turn to virtual, or my figuring out the turn for how we're going to operate, in a bigger picture going forward. So those everyday leaders, were stepping up. One of our other employees saw that issues of mental health and wellness needed to be talked about, and had the courage to talk about his own journey, and every Wednesday started to become Wellness Wednesday because he brought it to the table as a topic that we would all discuss. And so there are so many opportunities to lead. And I think the pandemic created such opportunity because there were so many challenges that all of us were attempting to navigate through.
That's amazing. And as a great example, and leadership takes different forms, and it comes from different people, and you're surprised when you see it and so grateful when you see it. It makes a difference. So that's a quick walkthrough of a really compelling book. And again, for anyone listening to this, I really recommend that you check this out. If you're a supervisor with people, this is great to look at all of these ideas through the lens of a supervisor. If you're someone who is earlier in your career looking to put yourself on a course, this is a great framework, a great way of thinking about how you can navigate a career successfully. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Such a good job. And I'm really appreciative of the time today and sharing these insights with our readers. Take stock, take risk, take credit, take a hand, take a stand, and take command. And Veta, you can take a bow.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
That's
Thanks for
lovely.
being with us today.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
being
much,
with us.
Tom.